Welcome to MarketPlay, the marketing podcast where we chat with small business owners and entrepreneurs all about what they do and how they got to where they are. I'm your host, Meryl Hathaway, and we're brought to you by Two Trees PPC out of Sacramento, California. So sit back and listen to our conversation as we chat all about business. And welcome to MarketPlay. Hello, I'm Meryl Hathaway, and today our guest is Caitlin Kolb, the founder and owner of Pilates Done Differently, formerly Studio 20, in San Francisco. Caitlin specializes in post-rehab care and is known citywide for her unique approach to Pilates and the results she can achieve with her clients. Driven by her passion to help people feel at home in their bodies and more fulfilled in their lives, her teaching is trauma-informed, comforting, and intuitive. With more patience, care, and generosity, she knows Pilates can be much more than what it is used for traditionally. Now, Caitlin has her sights set on increasing accessibility to the therapeutic movement industry and has been running an outreach program for the last 2 years to serve that cause. Through grants awarded by a generous private foundation, Caitlin and her team collaborate with local rehabilitation centers to pair individuals from underserved communities with a PDD staff member. The clients in the program are able to work with PDD on a regular basis, move towards their body-based goals, and have their sessions covered in full. Caitlin is steps away from receiving nonprofit status for this program and hopes to increase accessibility across the Bay Area mindful movement industry. I'm delighted to welcome Caitlin to the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Meryl. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's so nice to have you. I have so many questions. I have so much I want to know, but we're going to play our first segment of the show just called Getting to Know You. Series of this or that questions. Answer with your first instinct response and don't think too hard about it. Okay.
Good.
Okay. Tablet or laptop?
Ooh, laptop. I am
laptop. Yeah.
Technologically not advanced at all. So the fact that I'm here with you right now on my laptop is a small miracle.
Oh my gosh. I am so overjoyed that it worked out. And I understand. I feel like so many people, I have a tablet, like I've said in previous shows, and I'm still learning how to use all the things. Like it doesn't have USB plugs and stuff. So I'm like, there has to be an answer to that, but I have not done any research to find out what that might be.
Yeah, totally. My brain starts to like fog when those kinds of things happen. So yeah, me and my laptop.
I get it. I understand. Yes. She's a good cookie. All right. Coffee or tea?
Ooh, that is a hard one.
I know.
I am going to say tea, shockingly. Tea.
Okay. Do you have a favorite tea?
I'm going to go with like a ginger tea. I feel like, I drink decaf. I do like decaf coffee. Love a good latte and mochas, but I feel like I could live without them. Tea, I don't think I could live without.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good way of saying it. Also, tea, I mean, they're both very natural products. Like we know that, but there's something about tea that's like, it's literally leaves and flowers and stuff. And there's something about that makes me be like, this is way better for me. Just somehow, I just feel like it is. Also, I love saying the tea rooibos.
Oh,
have you ever had rooibos tea?
Yes. And I actually wouldn't even, I'm like that person that doesn't really order that if I go out because I don't think I'm going to pronounce it right.
Yeah. I'm just saying what I feel like it's called. Let's go with that. I worked at a place where we served it and I never actually tried it. I don't know why, but this morning it just came up where I was like, I got to get some rooibos. I got to figure out what that's all about. Anyway, Instagram or TikTok?
Can I say neither?
Yes, you can.
Neither.
Yes, you can. Yeah. I'm much more of a neither myself these days, although I do really respect how people use both to their benefit. It's kind of amazing. For me, like mental health, and it's May, so we're Mental Health Awareness Month. It is not good for me. So I don't use it as much as possible.
100%. Yes, agree.
But I do love animal videos. And I swear there are some amazing animal videos on both that have me laugh out loud like nothing on television does.
Yes,
it's kind of
that
incredible.
And like little babies, like babies and children and all those videos. And I 100% agree
Yeah,
with
like
you.
the babies that squawk at each other, like they have their own language. Those are always really funny videos. I like those.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
The other thing that we watch is we like to watch the videos of news reporters flubbing. Have you ever watched those compilation videos?
My fiance has sent me those before. I should probably follow somebody that like puts them up, but I don't.
It's legit one of the things to make me belly laugh. Like I'm laughing now just picturing this one where this bee goes in this guy's face and he starts losing his mind. But yeah, those are super fun too. All right. Pilates mat or reformer machine?
Ooh. I am going to actually say Pilates mat, but not the traditional kind of Pilates mat that you would, or people would imagine in their heads when they think Pilates, which might be jumping too far ahead. But like, you know, I don't like the 100 or anything like very traditional about that. But I love the feeling of being on the mat, and I think that it's a really foundational place to go, and just even lying down and breathing. I mean, the amount of times I've needed to do that in the last year is unmeasurable. And I think, you know, just having less time in the equipment this year has really made me fall back in love with just the fundamentals. And, you know, I love the power of simple things. So I love the reformer, but again, couldn't live without lying on my mat.
Yeah. And the mat is the cool thing where you can really put a mat almost anywhere. You can take a mat almost anywhere and you can put a mat almost anywhere. It's kind of crazy when you think about it like that.
For sure.
All right. Netflix or YouTube?
Ooh, Netflix all the way.
Okay.
I'm like, am I going to stick with that answer? Yes, I'm going to stick with that answer.
Yeah. It came out right away. So that was your instinct. And then this last one is hilarious to me because you just answered it, but the seal or the 100?
Oh my God. Neither.
I love the seal. I've always loved the seal. I'm always like, ooh, ooh, every time I do it.
And do you have a moment where you're like, why? Why am I doing this?
It's just that like little bit of a teeter-totter kind of a vibe. The 100's it's the worst.
It's the worst. It is like one of the exercises where people are like, oh, I hate Pilates. It hurts my neck. It hurts my back. I feel terrible. And I'm like, hey, tell me about your experience, you know? And it's always like, yeah, I went to the Y. I took them a mat class. We did the 100 and I'm like, there it is. Of course, I don't actually say it to the client, but in my head, I'm
because it starts it starts right at the top of the session, no matter what you do. So you're starting with the thing that's like, ugh. Every time.
I never teach them. I never teach the 100 or the seal.
Really? That's fascinating. I love it. Because to me, those are two that I always did in any class that I took with Pilates. Like I first did Pilates when I was 15 in my dance program. I did I was a very serious dancer for a while. And we did mat Pilates and I just remember I loved the seal. I thought it was really fun, but the 100 was like, oh my God. There were just certain things that are just, depending on your strength level and what you feel comfortable with, are just going to push your back up against the wall every time. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it.
Yeah, I know. I'm not really into the traditional choreography. You know, anything that's like, here's what we do and you need to make yourself fit into this. It's just not my jam.
No, and I love that about you. Okay, so here we go. So let's move into humble beginnings. I would love to know, what was your very first job ever?
My very first job was at Lowe's Theaters. Do you remember Lowe's Theaters? They no longer exist. So sad. But yeah, I worked at the movie theater. That was my first job. High school, college. It was even something that I did when I first moved to San Francisco. When I was also a dancer, and I was doing my professional dance career and working at Lowe's at night. So like the 5 to 1 shift.
Wow. You must have seen something.
For sure. Well, at that point I was doing the guest service desk, which, I mean, yes, you definitely, you see some things, and late at night you also see some things, and yeah, for sure.
what was like one of the crazier things that you witnessed at the 1 a.m. hour at the movie theater?
Gosh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just like, and this happens at any hour, and this is like a PSA to everybody, never to be this person. It's like the person that watches the whole movie and then wants a refund because they don't like the movie. That was always some of my favorites. What
is that? It's like, okay.
Yeah. You're like,
that was a gamble you were supposed to understand you were taking
right,
coming in.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, we definitely saw all kinds of fights in the movie theaters, you know, and yeah, all kinds of things.
Wow.
The Metreon has like actual security in it because things like legit happen there. So.
Oh my gosh. Did you have to handle money and everything as well when you were there? Like cash register type stuff?
Yeah, I did more of that. Well, actually, yeah, I did. Even here, we would close out all the registers at the end of the night. And I did a lot of that back in the East Coast too, in New York, where I'm from.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where are you
Long
from
Island.
originally?
I was born in Long Island. Yeah, I'm kind of a New Yorker at heart. I know that's somewhat debatable to people, whether the Long Islander is actually a New Yorker or not.
It totally counts,
Okay.
First of all. I have a bunch of family on Long Island, and I lived in New York for 6.5 years, but my whole extended family is from New York, and I consider myself a New Yorker partly because of that, and partly because I lasted 6.5 years. It wasn't a decade, which is what they say it takes, but it felt like one. So, you know, I think it counts.
It's for sure. Yes, I validate that for you.
Yeah.
Big time.
Thank you. I feel seen. So what led you from the movie theater world, all the way to this point where you've created and started your own business? Like what, it's a long journey, I know, but if there's some bullet points that stand out to you, how did this career come about for you?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I was a professional dancer and, but I was kind of always one of those dancers that, had something else going on. Like I always had like this side hustle. I we won't analyze why, but, so it's like, I always had that thing going on with Lowe's. And then, I finally wanted to, dive into something that felt a little bit more congruent with my passions. And so I kind of, did some research, was honestly deciding between Pilates and yoga. And, for a few different reasons, I went down the Pilates path. Anatomy was always really interesting to me. And so I kind of got first certified more as just to support my dance career. And then the more and more I, got deeper into my Pilates career, the more I was really falling in love with the work and falling in love with just working with people. I really adore people. And it was even something that I adored when I was working in Lowe's theaters. Like I always loved the people I was working with. And so, fast forward, a few years, a physical therapist reached out to me and she had really, really hurt her back. And she had taken my class before and, she liked the way that I worked. And long story short, I started going to her house because she couldn't leave her home. And we just started collaborating a lot. I really started to kind of hone my eyes and my skill on how we could make the work a little bit more therapeutic, and what worked and what didn't. And, she was sharing with me, it was a very reciprocal relationship. And so I started to kind of fall into the post-rehab field that way. And so she introduced me to more physical therapists and I started to collaborate with more physical therapists. At the time, I was really specializing more in backs, disc herniations and chronic back pain and sacral dysfunction and things like that. But then the more I started collaborating, the more I started working on, other types of injuries and pain. And I had a mentor who was a physical therapist and she totally saved me, as in the Pilates field, doing more post-rehab work is very much swimming upstream. It's not, Pilates has very much been taken over by the fitness industry. So yeah. So
similar to yoga in a lot of ways,
totally.
Right?
Very, very true.
Yeah. The intentions of both skill sets are very, they're meant to be like mindful and therapeutic for your body and your mind. And it is interesting that a lot of people think it's now just like a ritzy white lady in Lululemon pants kind of a vibe. And it's like definitely not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's such a huge loss in that, I mean, just like not only historically, but just like for, this sounds so dramatic, but for the world, I mean, like kind of like I said in my bio, it really can be used for more than what it is used for. So I found this mentor who was a master Pilates trainer, but also a physical therapist. And she really kept me inspired. Just her support was just like paramount in my growth and staying in it. And, around that time, I was also kind of falling out of love with my career as a dancer. And, I just had this moment where, I knew it was time to leave my dance career. And I kind of went full time into my Pilates career. I felt really lucky that, I had another career going because, as as a dancer, it is like every cell of your being is a dancer, right? I mean, it is your whole identity. So that was like a big transition for me. But I feel very, very blessed that I had this other thing already happening that I loved already.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about when you said earlier, like, I'm not sure why I always had the side hustle. I think that's why. I think you're probably, without even realizing it, very aware that at a certain point you have to retire as a dancer. Coming from the acting field, because I ended up leaving dance behind when I was in college. I went there as a major and then I dropped it to a minor and I started focusing elsewhere. And I always knew I wanted to act. So it's funny that I had a 14-year acting career. And I'm technically, I'm still in it, but the past few years I've been like doing what's a similar thing to you, where I'm sort of like been dabbling in where else are my passions kind of moving me. And I think that's so common, is having to sort of, back in the day, it was like people would have a 30-year career and then like retire after having one job. And we all know that it's so completely different now. And especially since the pandemic, I think so many more people are in this transitional period of like, either I'm so burnt out from doing, X, or this gave me such perspective of like, I really don't want to live my life in this way. I want to do something different, something that gives me a different way of being. Yep. And I just think, in hearing how it worked for you, it sounded super organic. And you said the word collaboration a lot. And I just love to know what exactly that meant. Like, when you collaborated with different physical therapists, did that mean you're literally working with them one-on-one, or you're collaborating to do things with other people? What exactly is that?
It took a couple different shapes. I mean, with a couple physical therapists, I really, really was working with them one-on-one, so they could kind of understand. I mean, the first physical therapist who really got me into post-rehab work, I was her teacher, so she was a client of mine. And so it was just, I was helping her, in her recovery journey, but she was also like contributing to me so much because I was really building my skill at the time to work with somebody, that has, is in a different place in their lives, has a different set of goals, needs greater generosity and care. With her, it was that relationship, I was her teacher. And then some of the physical therapists that she then introduced me to, they would just kind of, hop in every now and again and kind of take a session with me. And then I could write them and ask them questions. And, we would go back and forth about clients. So we were like seeing, clients at the same time. So I was really lucky to meet a lot of medical professionals that really valued the power of movement, and working with a movement professional, because, not all parts of the medical industry are like that. And so I was really, really blessed to have that kind of, collaboration.
Yeah. It makes so much sense that, that you would sort of go in that direction. Was it also just that, teaching Pilates is one thing, but the post-rehab care, it sounds like it affected you differently also. So what exactly is that about? Because it really is a very different way of looking at everything through the lens of Pilates.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. It like makes me feel all the feels. I think, in one part, I was just getting so much more fulfillment out of, helping, somebody really feel better. I mean, sure, if you are, going into a workout class, hopefully you do feel better at the end, even if you go in pain-free. But there is something really special about, somebody trusting you in their healing journey. Like that is a different kind of bond. And, as somebody who really loves people and loves to build relationships, like I think that just really worked for me, for my like system, but I think it was also, even it was, I got to be, I think being in the post-rehab industry versus the fitness industry was also just such a better fit for me, and the value system that is there. Even for my own journey with my own body, living in the fitness industry was like, I was going to burn out from that real fast. And I just didn't like being a part of it. And so, being in the post-rehab industry and, being more of a leader of making people feel safe and, making them feel more right sized, like you are okay exactly where you are and I'm here to help. That was a fit for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like organically you were already creating your own business by being an individual. I wonder, I guess, did you consider yourself like a contractor? Like, how did that work when you actually worked with people and build people? Because I think that's a really interesting side of things that almost never get discussed, is like, what do you call yourself when you're doing that? Or how do you make that like a legitimate thing that then you deal with your taxes?
Totally.
Like, what is that?
Oh my God, the whole world of self-employment taxes.
I know. We don't want to touch on it briefly.
Trigger word. I was a contractor. And
okay.
I would definitely recommend that to somebody. I was really lucky in that, I was working in somebody else's studio and I was building my name, and I was building this like niche for myself. And I built a little community for myself, that then I was able to open my own space and not be like, oh, I have no clients, like I already had done a lot of the really hard work, of like building relationships and having people that trust you and want to continue to pay for your services, I was a contractor. And yes, when you are a contractor, touching on the taxes briefly, it's like, well, I was definitely flying by the seat of my pants at first when I was a contractor. Doing my first year of self-employment taxes was a big slap in the face. Definitely save more for taxes than you think. So yeah.
It can be very complicated, but it sounds like though you were able to really maintain yourself while you were building your business. So were there any any specific things that you were doing? Like, did you have any other gig just for money to kind of filter in while you were building your clientele? Or were you doing well enough that it worked out just to be frugal in the meantime? Because I think that's a big thing for a lot of people, that especially if you're in some sort of service, and you're doing service for people and you're an individual, building a client base of almost any kind is going to take time, and you still have bills to pay. So how did that kind of work out on your end?
Yeah. Again, I was lucky in that I was like dancing and building my clientele at the same time. So, by the time I walked away from my dance career, I already had a clientele, and I had more people that were wanting to work with me, but I didn't have time for them before. And so I was able to open up my schedule. And then just kind of like be really frugal and, make the quinoa.
That's so smart. And love that quinoa. But it's great. That's great that it worked out in that way, where they literally are like, well, don't quit your day job. And you were like, yeah, I'm not. But for you, it was an organic passion that then led into, oh, wow, this is coming at a time that makes so much sense for me to walk away from this and focus just on that.
Sure.
So it sounds like there was luck involved, and also a lot of work that in the right timing, it made it a lot of sense for you. So how do you see the therapeutic movement industry growing? Because I think that's probably a term a lot of people are not aware of per se. So I would say, just touch a little bit on that, and how you see things growing, changing, becoming more mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an important question. And I think it really comes down to like how much it's valued, and I think, right now I'm really putting my focus in, creating more access to it coming out of the physical therapy world. But I do think, and I would love to see it grow more in the mainstream world. It's just is more of an uphill climb, because, people are, they're like, if it's not hurting, it's not working, or like, I have to be like almost throwing up. And
I've never understood that. Why does anybody, like a Barry's boot camp, I'm sure you're great, but why are people puking? Because the thing is yes, or CrossFit, there's a level of push your body past the limit, because that's how your body grows and gets stronger. Sure. But you don't have to puke.
100%. 100%. Yes.
Also, why would you go back after puking? But some people are like, that means that it's working. And I'm like,
totally. It's like, you'd want to take a deeper dive into their own nervous system for sure. And like as a blanket statement on, how you should be moving and working out, I definitely don't subscribe to that at all. And there was a time in my life, I never got to the place where I was like puking, but there was definitely a time in my life, like, that dance mindset where you're just like, you're leaving it all out there. Right. So it's just like, and it's super competitive and you're going past what you should be. And, then you might end up with injury, anxiety, like all kinds of side effects that, are, it's a big picture of how you want to live your life and what's sustainable for your life is not necessarily ideal.
Yeah. So what made you, or I guess what's the hardest part about now having a physical location? Because I don't think that question is asked enough these days, where it's like, okay, everybody who had a physical location for a business last year had to really confront some issues. But even moving out of that, having a physical location always means, a different overhead than when you're just going one-on-one to people's homes. So what do you think is the hardest part and the biggest benefit of that?
Well, I mean, I'll start with the benefit and then I have probably an answer you're not expecting, but, I mean, I loved opening the physical space, one, because, then I got to really be more in charge of the experience that I wanted to deliver to my clientele, you know, and especially in the therapeutic movement industry, like that is important, you know, how people feel when they first walk in the door, and how they feel moving in, if they feel safe and comfortable moving inside, you know, your premises is important. So that it felt really good, because trying to do therapeutic movement in fitness spaces was like, you know, trying to get somebody to calm down while there's people snapping and clapping around them is a lot. But yeah, and you know, but then I think it's just anything, you know, that builds community, and, you know, you get to kind of give people the gift of having some space for themselves and doing something for themselves. Like, it was just like an extra amount of, you know, fulfillment and joy that I got from my work. But yeah, I mean, especially, you know, I'm here in San Francisco, the overhead is super high. It's crazy. So yeah, you know, I think it is really important to talk about that as small business owners in this last year. And I actually ended up closing my physical space at the end of February of this year. So I kept it open for almost a year in the pandemic. And, you know, I had the space for 5.5 years, and it was very special to me. It was my first physical space of my own. And lots of great memories there, and people that worked there and, you know, moved there. And so it was a big decision, but, you know, after paying thousands upon thousands of dollars of rent, you know, for a space that I couldn't use, I really had to, you know, kind of put my feelings aside and look at the reality of the situation and think about the long-term vision that I have for my business. And San Francisco gave me this like little window of time that I could unilaterally terminate my lease. And it was kind of coming at a time where like the writing was on the wall, because I was paying my full rent and still paying, you know, I have a team of employees, and we're seeing people virtually, which has been going a lot better than I ever thought, because, you know, I'm not a computers person. You know, we're doing a lot of beautiful work with people this year. And so I made it the year, and then it was things were starting to get financially a little bit tighter. And I was kind of like, okay, like I want to keep all my employees. I want to keep running my outreach program. The thing that makes sense to let go is the space. So it's a hard decision. A tough decision, but it sounds like it definitely made a lot of sense. And I think it's always a part of having a business or creating a career or maintaining a career, is having to make choices that ideally you'd never have to make, but almost always there's going to be something that comes up that is a give and take, and you have to be realistic. So, but that being said, the outreach program you just mentioned, so that's something that's obviously a huge, exciting deal. So will you go into a little more detail about how that runs and like what exactly that means for you, and also how it like supports the rest of your business in a way, you know? Well, you know, I started a couple of years ago. It kind of, you know, we talked a little about the fitness industry and what that is. And, you know, I think the extra layer is, you know, the Pilates industry is very much a luxury service. You know, it's like Pilates is expensive. And especially, you know, in San Francisco, if you have a physical space, you know, you have to set, you know, your prices to cover your costs. And so it is definitely one of those things where, you know, if you have a successful Pilates studio, you are likely still just serving the top few percent of people, you know, and, you know, I was really proud of my business, but, you know, I was still like, I believe in this work, and I believe in, you know, helping people in this way. And I feel like more people should have access to it. And so long story short, I thought I was gonna have to volunteer to do it. You know, I got certified as a domestic violence survivor advocate, and I started just volunteering on the side and doing body-based care that way. And then I met this fierce woman who works in the social justice system. And she just like planted the seed in my head that there are grants in the world. And I don't know why I never thought of that before. I never thought of it. And it was kind of this really like kismet thing where like I told one of my employees that I was thinking of looking for some grants. And then a couple of days later, somebody in my community approached me who sat in the foundation that was starting to do another round of grant funding. So yeah, wow. it was really like the universe had my back moment.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So yeah, then I just started to, again, reach out to my community. I mean, really, truly, my whole life, community has just been everything to me. And, you know, at the time I had a client who was a surgeon at a couple of big hospitals here, and he started connecting me with some physical therapists. And, you know, I already had my, some networks of acupuncturists and physical therapists. And, I started just kind of working my connections a little bit, and telling people that I really wanted to try and increase accessibility to this kind of work, and I started doing some demo classes. And yeah, and now, you know, for the last 2 years, we have been bringing this work to underprivileged and underserved communities, mostly coming out of our general hospital here, but I have worked with some other service-based organizations here in the city. But really coming out of physical therapy is just such a great pathway for the work that we do. And it's a very like particular and special time in somebody's healing journey that I feel really good about supporting them in, because oftentimes people leave physical therapy and, you know, hopefully they feel a good bit better, but it's still kind of like this now what moment.
I have lived that 4 different times. So I relate so much to exactly that, which is, so I had 3 hip procedures, the last one being a hip replacement at 36. And I had a shoulder procedure in between. And when I tell you that after, and they were all consecutively within 4 years, I had all of those procedures. And physical therapy is great, but it is very much, if you're someone who ran marathons and was a dancer and a competitive jump roper and a lot of other things that you just push your body, which was me, I had no idea what I could do anymore. And I felt very foreign in my own body, which is a really scary experience. And I know you had mentioned anxiety before, and I definitely think that it created something within me that I still to this day work on, which is an anxiety that having like being hospitalized or having things kind of, you know, happen and then being a foreigner in your own body for a while, it is a very overwhelming experience that you have to people just sort of assume you're okay, like once you're up and around. And as you know, there's so much more beyond that people really actually need, mentally and physically. So I think it's just so wonderful also that, because it is really true. A lot of people think of yoga and Pilates as just being this inaccessible thing. Like I just cannot spend, you know, $45 on a class or whatever it is. So to make it accessible, it should be accessible. And because there's so many factors that go into these types of businesses, it just kind of can't be in certain areas, like you're saying. So creating what you have done and doing the outreach you have, I mean, how fulfilling has that been to be able to you just know that you're getting it to people who really need it and deserve it just as much as anybody else does.
Yeah. I mean, it is like my heart's work. And, you know, I'm so lucky that I have a team too, who also just love to serve in that way, who are all kind of, you know, into the movement industry because they want to help people. You know, it's a very special place to be. And, right now I'm working on the nonprofit, and I have a lot of other things happening with the business. I'm not doing as much of the teaching for the outreach. And I have this incredible 3 women who are taking care of our outreach program participants, and they just love it as much as I do, and learn so much. Every person that we, have the honor of working with, really teach us a lot. But, we have had some really special people come through the program that have, just taught me so much about resilience and, just life and trust. And, so I feel very, very blessed.
Yeah, it's incredible. So just before we go to our last segment of the show, I just have to know, so post-rehab care, how is it, because obviously you're using Pilates as a part of that. So what exactly does it look like when, we know what Pilates looks like, but what does the post-rehab care using Pilates look like?
Well, it looks nothing like what Pilates usually looks like. And,
I bet.
Kind of like what you were sharing. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared with me. When you leave PT and you've gone through surgeries and injuries, you come out with, things have happened to, your emotional body as well. And,
Right.
Oftentimes in the very beginning, we really are just breathing with people and, listening to their stories and making them feel, heard, and, maybe making them feel that like everything they're feeling is okay. They're not wrong. Sometimes people come out of, the medical system and, there's not always a reason why they're, feeling the things that they are. And, so yeah, there's a lot of support that happens when they first come in the door, and breath, nervous system. Like we always prioritize the nervous system and always remind people that, they are in charge, and, we are really helping to guide them, and, of course, choosing safe exercises, but reminding people that they have their own agency and that they are in charge of their own body. So that just, we can increase the safety on all levels, because you can do, like the right, quote unquote, right exercise, like from now until the end of time. But, if your body doesn't feel safe doing it, or you're still in an anxious place, it might not, have the power that you plan for it to have. And also it might not be the right exercise for you. So I think it's also just always like a learning, we don't put somebody's body to choreography. Like we really try to meet the person in front of us and discover what the right things are for that person. So it changes all the time, which is, there's no like exercise prescription, for everybody's back that's going to work, like you really have to be patient and dive in, and, both parties need to be willing to learn and adjust and modify and be patient and go slow. So
patience is huge. Yeah. It's so huge when it comes to that, the post-rehab. It really, because there's just so many different levels of, I'm sure there are, like me, a lot of athletes that just really want to just get, pedal to the metal and just go again and be able to do all the things they could do before. And it takes someone really intuitive to be able to not just hear that from them, but also be able to kind of like coax and soothe them into like, hopefully we can get you there. But if you were to do that now, it wouldn't work, and it would be painful. So let's take our time with it. I am very much like, I was literally still using my walker, and I was like, I'm fine, like all the time, trying to get up and do things. And everybody's like, just let me get it for you. And I was like, no, I'm good. Because you just want to feel like your normal, quote unquote, normal self again.
Totally.
So meeting people where they're at is like so beyond crucial. And I love that you mentioned just that breath and the nervous system is so crucial, especially at the beginning, but throughout. I mean, because no matter what you have, like like you said, we said at the beginning, coming back to your mat and just laying on your mat and being able to deep breathe. A lot of people don't know how to do it, and don't realize how much that alone can help your emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Just knowing how to breathe and being able to sit with your breath.
100%. And, so much of what we do, in our busy lives and our computer focused lives and sitting a lot and like all of these things, we really have gotten away from good functional breathing. So, it's like, so much about coming in to doing Pilates with us looks differently with each person, but most people will start with breath, unless being still is activating for them, and then maybe not. But, it's like almost everybody can benefit from a little bit of mindful breath work. Yeah,
definitely. And I just have one last question before we get into Branded, our last segment of the show, is just, so considering that you are a person that, I totally side with, which is that social media kind of is not where you like to be. What is your marketing strategy when it comes to keeping your business afloat and thriving when so much of marketing kind of always wants you to use the social media platforms? What do you prefer instead?
So I have really played the long game in that, like, I have just always, built relationships, networked, has been really good to my people. And, I have literally, and now I've been in this business for 15 years. I had a physical space for 5.5, but I've been teaching for 15, and I have only done word of mouth referrals. And, that really worked for me. And actually, earlier today, I was saying to my partner, like, oh my God, Meryl's going to think I'm crazy. Like, I'm like a grandma in the business industry because I don't really, do any like traditional hardcore marketing strategies. But, and every once in a while I try to dive into Instagram, but it's just, it never kind of fits right. But, people are my jam. So it's always just been word of mouth has been my thing.
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting about that is that just because word of mouth is your jam, first of all, you're not a grandma. And even if you were, you'd be a cool grandma. Grandmas can be super cool.
It's so true.
I have actually been thinking of myself more as a grandma. First of all, I've been letting my silver go out since last year. So I will be fully silver in the next few months or so. I'm hoping. My hair grows pretty fast. We'll see. But no, I'm similar in that I've really started pulling away from the idea of having to put myself on video all the time or, post photos of myself or what have you. It just started not aligning with me. And I think there's more and more people who really actually feel that way, but still feel the pressure that they have to do it for themselves or for their business. So I think this is a great conversation where there's so many ways to market yourself that don't just include that. And even if you decided at some point to do Google ads or ads in some way, you totally could do that and not have to be, a slave to a social media platform. But really that the crux of it comes down to, for your business, the referrals make more sense really coming from word of mouth and coming from physical therapists around, that sort of circle around this world. Because they're the people who are also going to be meeting more and more patients who are in desperate need of these things versus people who are on socials, like searching for it. I feel like that's, like you were saying, it doesn't really match up per se. But the other part of it is that you might have clients that are doing the social media themselves, promoting you just because they feel good. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget can exist too, is you don't necessarily have to be the one doing it. You can have an account that just exists and have people tag you or, hashtag with your name, like look her up or whatever it is. But even that can totally work if you're doing what you do, which is doing something really well that helps people. People naturally want to talk 100%. About that, especially if it's something that's more rare to find. So it makes so much sense.
Well, thank you for that validation. I really appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome.
I
am holding space for you. I see you.
You're the best. I do. I think social media is really important to have as a business. It's like you can't get away from it. It's like you have to at least have a page just for like legitimacy. Like when I opened my studio, and I had to get a small business loan, like I needed to put my Instagram hashtag or my Instagram, see, I even said the wrong word, grandma, my
handle.
Instagram handle
it's crazy
on there, I'm like, oh my God, the world. But yeah, and I think what you were saying about non-traditional ways, like I just did a swag sale for my outreach program. And so people were like excited, like, oh my God, I'll totally, use a Pilates Done Differently tote and like all these things, which is like a great, easy marketing, and it benefits the outreach program. And so it's like a win-win.
Yeah, I think it's totally a win-win. Thanks. I love it. All right, we're going to move into our last segment of the show, just called Branded, so we can throw some fun numbers in the episode. And by numbers, I mean factual information.
I think I saw this on Ash's episode, and I was like, oh my God, there's a test? I'm the worst at tests.
Here's what I like to say. There are no wrong answers, and even when you get them wrong, I give you a point.
Great.
So don't worry
All right, I love this test.
It's more just meant to like. There's certain things within the history of things or facts around industries that I just find interesting. Awesome. So I figure why not throw some, it's more trivia, right? Like, because also beyond this, if you get anything wrong, it for any kind of trivia moving forward. Great. So I'm just trying to help you win a prize at trivia night.
Great.
That's all
Thank
you. Okay. So number one, there's just 3 questions too, and then we're done. Joseph Pilates created Pilates officially for the rehabilitation of whom? Was it A, postpartum mothers, B, World War I soldiers, or C, Olympic athletes?
B.
It was B. Yes, he was also at war. Yeah. He was a soldier and came back and was surrounded by all these people, soldiers who were needing rehab and figuring out what to do with injuries and all kinds of things. And he'd already been like developing it, but Pilates officially became Pilates when he did that, which I thought was fascinating.
Totally. And I think, it's kind of like one of the ways I'm always like, oh, it's so sad that Pilates has gotten just taken into the fitness industry. And, not that it doesn't have its uses there, but, it really was built to rehabilitate. And there's some, people in the Pilates industry that are very traditional, that look like somebody like me that doesn't really we use the principles, but not any of the traditional choreography. And they're kind of like, oh, you should, but I really truly believe that Joseph Pilates was still alive today. He was an innovator. So he would be, progressing with the times and, creating with what, science tells us now. And I think that the work would have changed. So yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that's a really interesting point too, to think about it that way. All right. Number 2, at the very center of its form, Pilates is what kind of training? A, aerobic, B, plyometric, or C, resistance?
C.
It is resistance. Yes. I almost laughed when I said plyometric.
Well, but you know what?
Which is literally like jumping and slamming your body around.
There are Pilates. I mean, have you seen some of the new, there's all kinds of Pilates in the world. There's for sure, I'm pretty sure actually, there is probably some class in the world that's called plyo Pilates, for sure. God. Or
it's so the opposite of what it's meant to do.
Pilates or something. Because
Pilates. I first learned what plyometrics was when I did P90X.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, and was just literally throwing my body around. If I could have video of how dumb I looked doing so much of that, and the amount of cursing that I did when I was doing P90X, because the way that they say, if anybody doesn't know this, it's like a video series that has very intense, high intensity workouts, but it's very effective, and it's whatever. Couldn't have been a worse thing for me in the long run. I ended up getting a hip replacement, but it's just, but it's funny because I just picture it's just not, there's nothing chill about it.
No, definitely not.
No. And resistance training is the opposite, where it really is, it's your body resistance. And then when you use the reformer, the different
spring resistance.
The springs. All of that. All right. Last question. Pilates is historically popular among what community? That's fine. A, the dance community, B, the drumming circle community, or C, stepdads?
Can I just pick C for funsies?
What if it was for just step
That'd be amazing.
Really
Maybe
would be
that's
fun.
somebody else's niche market that they need to start.
I guarantee you it is. Like, stepdads need to know they can do Pilates too.
Totally.
You know?
But yeah, and you know what? It's like I say that like
dance, yeah.
Because I hate that I'm like that stereotype, you know, that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a dancer that turned into a Pilates instructor. So stereotypical.
There's a lot of them.
I know.
But you're doing way more with it than most people tend to do.
Thanks.
I mean, but it was actually, I mean, it was offered as a chance to improve technique and recover from injury when it first started. And he started integrating it and trying it out with people, and dancers like went crazy for it, which makes a lot of sense why I ended up in my program at 15, like learning Pilates for the first time within a dance setting.
For sure.
Because it all kind of ties up.
Yeah. So. And I think it is like a beautiful cross training for dancers for sure. I mean, it's low impact, but it also, you know, I mean, there's so much that can bring balance as dancers are doing something repetitive, so specific and repetitive all the time to their bodies. But I'm also like, you know, I hate that that's kind of like the 100 gives Pilates a bad name. I think, you know, people think like, I can't do Pilates because it's made for dancers. And I'm like, no, there's no prerequisite to Pilates, you know, like anybody can do it.
My uncle's in his 80s and he loves
that's
Pilates.
Awesome. I love hearing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Which I kind of loved hearing too. I was like, that's sort of awesome. So Caitlin, as we wrap up, thank you again for being here. And before we completely wrap, is there, where can people find your studio? What are the best ways to reach out if they're in need of this, or they want to go look up more information?
Yeah, you can. So my website, pilatesdonedifferently.com is up. And I do, even though I'm not on Instagram a lot, I do have Instagram, Pilates Done Differently too. So either one of those ways, I would love to connect.
Okay, great. And then same thing, if people want to contribute to the program that you're also running, the nonprofit and all of that, just reach out directly.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you so much for asking. So, you know, we're in the last steps of becoming a nonprofit. So I should have the nonprofit number fingers crossed, in the next couple months. So there's a little information about our outreach program up on the website. Yes, if anybody wants to support or they want to hear more, like definitely just reach out to me. But soon we will have even more up there. And there'll be, you know, the nonprofit, which would be called the Movement Care Collective, will have its own page and easier ways to donate and things like that.
So exciting. I loved having you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to chat with you, Meryl.
Thank you so much for listening to MarketPlay this week. I'm your host, Meryl Hathaway. We're brought to you by Two Trees PPC out of Sacramento, California. Always fighting for the small business. If you liked our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your colleagues. Have a safe week out there, and we'll see you next time.